Want to edit like Kold or BartVFX? Perfect. In this tutorial I will show you step by step how to create stunning 3D viral reels the right way. I'm going to recreate from scratch one of Kold's best animations. You can see it on screen right now. And the best part? All assets and project files are available for free in the description. So definitely I suggest to check that. If you ever struggled to achieve the Kold or BartVFX style, this video will change everything. So with that said, let's jump straight into the tutorial. Okay guys, so let's start with this tutorial. Of course, first what we are going to do is to create first composition. Let's name that main. Let's go with full HD resolution but reversed, so we will get like this real resolution like this, and then frame rate to 30 and duration to 10 seconds, then click OK. Okay, and after that, as you can see, at first frames of our animation we have white background, so let's create white background for now. Let's make new solid. Let's name that background and color to white. Click OK. Perfect. Then we are going to add here to our composition these walking people along with shadows for them. So let's add this GIF because I found animation like that in GIF format file, so let's import that. Okay, so right here I have this GIF. Of course, all assets along with project file you can find in the description. I'm going to upload this to After Effects right now. Okay, perfect. Now let's add here fill effect and let's set color to black instead of red. Click OK. Now let's copy this GIF by 5 times because in our composition we have 6 GIFs, 6 walking people. So as you can see right now we have 6 people. Now let's make all these layers a 3D layer. So let's click here. Now it's 3D layer, and also let's create new camera, new 3D camera. Click OK. Then we can already link a new null to this camera. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is to place these GIFs like that. Okay, so as you can see, some of them are going to be closer to camera, some of them are going to be in a little huger distance. So let's do it. Okay, let's go with first icon. Let's put this icon right here. Also we can change rotation on this man. Let's change this rotation by 180 degrees. Okay, like that. Okay, perfect. Now I'm going to change position of every GIF in exactly same way as our first GIF. So I will do it and I will back to you. Okay, I'm done. The only thing that I did, I just changed position and rotation of this GIF, so you shouldn't have any problem with that. The next thing that we should add to our composition is going to be this first text along with this smaller rectangle and this huger rectangle with only stroke on it. So let's do it. Let's start from the smaller rectangle. Let's click here on rectangle tool. Then let's set fill to red, probably this type of red, stroke to 0. Okay, now let's create rectangle. So let's press shift and then create that. Okay, in this size, for example. Now let's make this layer as 3D layer. Let's put that below camera and null. And now let's change position. Okay, so let's change this position, Z position, to the position where it's behind all people. Okay, so here probably let's place that right there or a little higher, probably like this, because somewhere here in the middle of this rectangle we need to add text, so we want that text to be not covered but these people. So it's probably the best position for this rectangle. Then let's add here roughen edges exactly there. Okay, so to do it we need to go to constants, then we need to go to rectangle path, and here we have roundness, and let's set that to 10 for example. Okay, like that. We can increase that to 20, I think. Okay, now it's perfect. After that, we need to add there this text. So let's do it. It will be people are text. So this is our first text. Let's add this text to our composition. So we just need to create a new text layer, and we just need to use Provision as our font, of course. Let's set fill to white, and let's write people are. Okay, exactly like that. Now let's change this layer to 3D layer, and then let's go to this rectangle shape layer, and let's copy position from this shape layer to our text. So it's going to be in the same position. Okay, exactly like that. Now let's move that to the middle of this rectangle, exactly there. Okay, and for now, last element is going to be this huger rectangle. So let's create that. Let's go to rectangle tool again, but right now let's go to fill options and click here to none. So we are going to not have any fill here, but in stroke we are going to increase that from 0 to exactly 7, and along with that let's change color to red, probably something like that. Click OK, and now let's create exactly same rectangle. It's going to be probably something like this. For this also we want to add here roundness to 20 probably also. Now let's of course make this 3D. Let's put it here. Now again let's copy position from this main rectangle and let's paste that to this rectangle. Okay, like that. We can make this a little bigger, so scale to, I don't know, maybe by 10% we'll increase that, so to 110. Okay, right now it should be perfect. Now I want to move these elements a little because it's not exactly like in original. So I will move a little this rectangle to be higher, to something like this. Now this also we can move to be higher, and these three people should be a little lower on screen. So let's move them to something like this. Okay, now it's better. Last thing before animating first things is going to be create shadows from this people, and it's actually going to be very easy because we just need to copy, for example, this GIF. Okay, and now on copied version, let's go to opacity and let's set that to 25. Now let's click here on pan behind anchor point tool and let's change anchor point somewhere there, so like on the floor on which our shadow will be. So exactly here we should position our point, and then go to rotation for our shadow, and let's go to X rotation and let's go here with 90 degrees. Okay, and by that, as you can see, we have our shadow. Now I'm going to show you one more time how to do that. On the second GIF, for example, this, let's copy that again. Now we need to do the same thing, go to opacity for our shadow, set that to 25. Then let's go to this tool, let's change another point to the floor. Now let's go to rotation and let's change X rotation to 90. Okay, we have another shadow. Now I'm going to do the same exact thing for rest of people. Okay, I created shadows for all of our GIFs. Now let's do first animations. We will start from this zoom out at first frames of our animation along with this rotation for our main rectangle. So let's get into it. First we need to go to our null and let's create first keyframe at start, second keyframe at 1 second mark, and now go to first keyframe and let's zoom that exactly like that. Now let's go to graph editor and let's create graph for this movement. It should be something like that. And also I'm going to do one little correction for our positioning for these elements. I'm going to link all elements to null and change this position on null. Okay, like that, maybe a little lower. Okay, now I will delete this null and I will move all GIFs a little higher. I will move this huger GIF a little higher also, maybe a little on the left. Okay, perfect. So as you can see, you always have to adjust elements. You will not get everything perfect at first try. I'm not different, so yeah, I had to change this a little, but it's perfect right now. Let's do also rotation animation for this main rectangle. So let's go to this main rectangle. Let's center another point, then go to rotation, to Z rotation. Let's create first keyframe for Z rotation at start, second in around 1 second mark. And let's go to first keyframe. Let's set that to -32. Now go to graph editor. Our graph should looks like this. Now I'm going to create another movement that is going to have peak at around 20 frame mark. So right there, let's link another null to our first null. Then let's go to position. Let's create first keyframe right here, second probably like there. Okay, as you can see here, our GIF is ending, so I'm going to just copy that and place copied GIFs at the moment when our first GIFs are ending. Now let's go to second keyframe and let's zoom this at second keyframe to probably something like that. Now let's go to our graph editor, and as I said before, our peak for this movement is going to be exactly on this mark. So we need to create graph that is going to have peak exactly here. I'm going to go with something like that, or maybe not so sharp. Okay, something like that should be perfect. You can check how it looks like. Okay, exactly as we want. Also, as you was able to see, exactly on the peak of our second movement, we have a little color change right here. So as you can see, background is black and icons are white. So we also need to add these changes to our animation. So exactly at peak, we need to change here this color of this background to black instead of white. So let's add here fill effect. Let's create first keyframe 1 frame before 20th frame and 1 keyframe exactly at 20th frame, and color on first keyframe should be of course white. On the second keyframe it should be of course black. Now because this background is black, we need to also change our GIFs to white, but as you are able to see here, also our shadows are disappearing. So first what I want to do is to delete all shadows from 20 frame mark. Okay, so exactly here. At the second part of our animation, we also don't have any shadows, as you can see. So we can go to our copied GIFs and delete all shadows from there. Now let's back to this main animation, and now let's go to one of our GIFs and create first keyframe here, second one keyframe ahead, and here we need to change this to white. So we are going to have white icon. Now let's copy this setting to every other GIF. Okay, perfect. Now also you are able to see here this wiggle animation of our rectangle and our text, and also this stroke rectangle is going to be smaller, and frame by frame it's transforming to this. So we are going to just recreate all of this. So we are going to create animation for our main rectangle, for our text, and our stroke rectangle. So let's back to this and create that. Okay, so let's go to our main rectangle. Let's go to the anarch point tool and let's change this anarch point exactly there. Okay, after changing our anarch point, let's go to transform, then go to scale. Now unlink that scale. As you can see, we can change this scale exactly like that, only because we changed our anarch point. If we'll move anarch point, for example, there, and we'll be trying to change scale by like that, as you can see, it's not going to work. So you need to put anarch point exactly there, because this is a place from which this is scaling as we change this. So it will be scaling from here higher and higher. So for this animation, our first keyframe is going to be like here. So of course we need to add here keyframe for scale. Second keyframe probably like here. Okay, and on first keyframe, of course, we are going to have 100 everywhere. And on second keyframe, middle setting for scale is going to be changed to like 200. Okay, it's a little too much. Let's level that down to like 150. Okay, now it's perfect. Now let's go to our graph editor for this. And here our peak is going to be exactly on this mark again. So let's create graph with peak on the 20th frame. Something like that should work. Let's also change this fill on this gives to white everywhere like that. Okay, now also in this 20 frame we have text change. As you can see here, you see 20th frame, and we have here text change from people are to willing. So let's go here and let's just cut that exactly there. Let's change here text to willing. Okay, like this. Also position here is changing of this text. So to do that, we just need to select both of text layers and link them to one null. Okay, exactly like this. And now let's go to position. Let's create first keyframe right here, second keyframe probably like there, and let's change position to the middle of our main rectangle again, maybe a little higher. Now let's go to graph editor, and our graph for this probably should look like that. Okay, now also let's go to our willing text, and let's go here to vertically scale, and let's change this to something like this. Also let's go to character and let's change that to italic. So it's going to be like rotated on the right a little like this. Okay, it's perfect. We can also set a little higher vertically scale here to probably 160. Okay, like that. And now it looks pretty good, but as you can see, it's not perfectly clean. So we need to do some things to make this text animation a little cleaner. First, what we want to do is to scale up second text to something like this probably. And second thing is going to add scale wipe effect on our first people are text. So it's going to be cc scale wipe effect, exactly that effect. Let's add that to our first text, and let's set right now 2 keyframes for strange. First keyframe at the end of this text, and first keyframe should be somewhere here. Now at first keyframe we are going to leave strange for 0.0, but on second keyframe let's change that to 3 probably. Okay, perfect. Also let's go to this strange vibe, and direction let's set to 0. Okay, strange, as you can see, is a little too huge. Let's set that to 2 probably. Okay, now let's zoom a little to this animation. As you can see, when our first text is disappearing, our willing text have to be in the exact same position. So let's change position of our first text a little down, something like this. Let's check how it looks like. Okay, yeah, That's it. It looks perfect, exactly how it should. Okay, now last thing for this part of animation is going to be this stroke rectangle. So we just need to change color of this from red to white for at our mark, and also we just need to make it smaller and in this position. So let's do it. First thing, let's go to this rectangle, and then let's go to layer constants, and here you can see and shape properties have show color. Let's set keyframe exactly here, and second keyframe right on this mark, and let's change color on the second mark to white. Okay, and now last thing for this is going to be to change position and scale for this, and do keyframes for that. So it's going to be transforming like here, you see, boom, 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 boom. Okay, so let's just do it. Go to this shape layer, then go to rectangle path, and here let's create keyframe for size. One keyframe there, one also there. Now let's go to transform here, and let's create two keyframes for position at exact same positions on timeline as for scale. Okay, now let's go to size, unlink size, and on the second keyframe let's change these settings to probably something like this. Now go to position and change position to change size a little. Okay, it should looks like this. And now let's create graphs for these two movements. First, let's check here. Let's create scale graph for both scale settings. It should be probably something like this. Now go to position. Here let's create something like this. Everything should have peak on this mark again. Okay, and with that our first part of animation is ready. Now we need to just do scale out like this with this to spend text, and it's going to be ready, and then just this last part of animation and we will be done with this. Okay, our scale out is going to have peak exactly here on 1 second and 10 frames. So let's create mark for this position on timeline. Now let's create another null and link that to our last null, and let's create here this movement. First keyframe somewhere here, second somewhere here, and now let's zoom that out to probably something like this. And also here, as you can see, we have this huge rectangle. We are going to create that also, so let's create that. Should be something like this. Okay, let's change stroke to like 10 and color of this to white. Now let's make this 3D, and let's change position to something like this. Okay, also we can move that below our camera and nulls, and let's add here roundness edges. So let's go to rectangle path to roundness. Let's set that to something like that. Also, of course, we need to add here graph for this. So go to graph editor, and graph should be pretty sharp. Probably something like this with the peak on our second mark. Also, I think that we can zoom this out a little like this. And now let's also add here this text to spend. Okay, so let's create new text layer, and I'm going to use this font, Optic Compete Italic, and let's just write to spend. Also, let's change properties for text back to 100, and for character we don't need this italic anymore, so let's disable this option as well. Now let's make that 3D, and let's scale up this text to something like this. Okay, exactly there. Now as well we need to add here drop shadow. Okay, so it will be cleaner. Let's go to layer styles, and let's change settings a little. distance to probably like 25 and size to like 60. Okay. Now as well we can add here drop shadow effect and distance to like 25, softness to something like this. Okay, perfect. Okay, and with that we are done with all animation and design for this first part of animation. Now we need to add here final touches, which are really important for this animation. Okay, so let's start from creating first adjustment layer. Let's add here posterize time effect, and usually we was setting this frame rate here to 16, but here we need to have a little lower FPS because this animation has really short movements, so we don't need so many frames per second here. Let's set that to 12 instead of 16 this time. Okay, let's add here another adjustment layer. Let's move that below this posterized time, and here we need to add deep glow. Okay, and radius we can leave as 500, but exposure let's change to 0.1. Okay, after deep glow let's create another adjustment layer, and here let's add CC vignette effect, and let's change amount to 150, and angle of view let's leave with this basic setting. Okay, let's add another adjustment layer. Let's add here this time film damage effect, and for this effect let's leave basic settings. Okay, and now last but not least effect is going to be chromatic aberration from uni. Okay, and here I'm going to set distortion amount to 0.3, radial blur to 2, lens radius to 1600, edge falloff to 1800, and chromatic saturation to like 50. Also, last thing, I almost forget that exactly here we need to add text animation for our to spend text. So let's do this as our last thing to do for this part of animation. Okay, let's go on to our second mark. Now let's move to spend right before this mark. Now go to window, and for this I'm going to use animation composer. It's free to use, free to download, so, and it's packed with insanely good text animation, but also as well animations for other things, like images for example here. So I'm going to go with this exact text animation. Let's go in. Okay, let's as well make that a little shorter like this. Okay, and with that we're officially done with first animation. We did here a lot of good job. We created design, animations, and of course final touches, which made this animation insanely better, as you can see right here on the preview. Okay guys, so let's finally get into this last part of our animation. So exactly this part with this rusty metal texture as our background, and with this 3D model of A8M right there with counter animation exactly on this display. So for first thing which we need to do is to recompose our first part, and let's name that part 1. Okay, now let's create new composition, and let's name that part 2. Okay, exactly like this. Okay, and here I have this metallic rusty textured background. Of course, all assets with that included you can find in the description. One more time again. Now let's import that. Okay, exactly like that. Now let's change scale a little. Now rotate that by 90 degrees. Let's make it smaller. Okay, exactly like this. Perfect. Now let's add here a add model, and it's going to be 3D model. So we need to add here new solid, and on this solid I'm going to add element 3D plugin. Thanks to this plugin we are allowed to add here inside in After Effects 3D models. After adding this effect on our solid, let's go to element and here scene setup. By clicking that, now we can see exactly there our workspace. And now I'm going to import here this 8M model exactly there. And now let's go to this model right there. Now click here to normalize size. Okay, exactly like that. Now I'm going to add a pre-made glassy texture, this one, on some of elements of this model, because as you can see, every element of this 3D model is separated and it's right there. So of course here this keyboard is going to be with this texture. Okay, keypad, this also, then also this add model. We need to add here this texture right there as well. And for the rest of elements of this model, I'm going to just go with black color. Okay. And now, as you can see, it's not so glassy as in original, because we also need to change this environment right here and right now. It's basic 2K, but actually we need to change that to probably this backlight 2K 25. Okay, yeah, it's going to be this one. Now let's click OK here. Perfect. Now I'm going to go to group 1, because in exact that group we have our model inside element 3D. Then go to create group null and click create. Now we created this null, and thanks that null we are able to control position, scale, rotation of this 3D model. So I'm going to scale that, also change position, scale that again, change position. Okay, it should be something like this. And now actually I'm going to add here some color correction. We can say that it's going to be final touches, and after final touches I'm going to add animations, because I think that this order of actions for this animation will be the best, and thanks that we will be able to get the best flow. And for now also I want to add two effects for our background. First it's going to be tint effect, and now for map with 2 I'm going to change that to red, and also add here motion tile effect. Let's go with 300 and 300 for output white and high. Now let's add effects on adjacent layers. Every effect which I'm going to add right now will be on another adjacent layer. Let's start from first adjacent layer, on which I'm going to apply deep glow effect, and I'm going to set exposure on 0.1. Then let's go with CC vignette, and let's set amount to 190. Okay, next effect is going to be film damage with basic settings. Another one will be chromatic aberration, and let's put distortion amount to 0.3, radial blur to 2, lens radius to 1600, edge falloff to 1800, chromatic saturation to 50, and paces to 7. Another effect is going to be posterized with frame rate set to 12. And now I'm going to add lux effect, this one. This is plugin and effect for color correction, but for now I'm going to only add here something called lens distortion. Okay, this one. And let's change distortion to 50 from 25. Okay, exactly like this. Perfect. Now I'm going to add this effect one more time, and here we are going to add our color collection. And right now we are going to spend a little more time here to perfect our look. First, let's add here lens vignette. It's actually here. Okay, and now in settings, let's only change amount to like 65. Now let's add here shoulders effect, this one, and let's change roll of start to like 0.15. Okay, then let's add Mojo 2, and now this will change our look a lot. Where is Mojo? Here? Okay. And in settings, let's change Mojo to 10, tint to 50, punch to 10, blue squeeze to 60, skin squeeze to 100, and cool war up to 10. Okay. Now also let's add 4-way color. Okay, let's put that here, and let's change some settings. Shadows to something like this, midtones to something like this, highlights to something like that, and global to global let's leave like this. And now let's add here curse effect, which is going to be almost the most important one. Okay, this is here. Let's put this below everything. So let's apply this, and let's move this below everything. And now let's play with this. I aim to something like that. Okay, it's basically done. Now let's add here animation. So we will start from making this counting animation, and it's pretty interesting because I'm actually going to do this inside element 3D a little. First I want to add new composition, and yeah, you hear right, new composition, and let's create that. Okay, now let's change white to probably, let's change that to 1000, and height to probably like 500. Okay, perfect. And now here I'm going to make for now this counting animation. I'm going to create new text here. I'm going to use Methodotica font. Okay, and now let's go to effects and presets, and now you need to have something like Creative Dojo Numbers Plus script. I actually have tutorial on how to use that on my channel. It's my first video. I'm going to apply this here. I'm going to go with precision to 0. Let's also argue that to the center. And now I'm also going to use prefix as USD. Okay, perfect. Now go to auto animation, increment, and enable that because we don't need an animation. We will create animation by ourselves. Now let's go here to end value and add first keyframe at start, second keyframe probably like here, and here let's put another keyframe with end value on 1500 like this, and here we can start from 0. Okay, perfect. Now let's only make this bigger. Okay, like this. Okay, it's ready. Now we can back to our part 2. Now let's import here this column with let's click here to unveil that. Okay, now let's go to element, then let's go to custom layers, custom texture maps. Here on layer 1 let's pick component, so our counting animation. Now let's go into element 3D. Okay, and then I'm going to go to blue screen, then to textures, diffuse, and now let's pick here custom layer 1. So we just linked to custom layer 1 this comp 1. Okay, like that. And as you can see, this is here. Okay, you can click OK. Now also we need to back to basic settings and change diffuse color for this to white actually. Now we can back to diffuse, and now you need to play with UV repeat and UV offset to center that and make that in the good size. So let's play with that. Okay, it looks good. Let's center that as well. Okay, we can click OK. And as you can see, it's here on our screen of our 8M. We have the animation. Now let's add here camera movement. So let's create new camera. Let's know this camera. Let's also make here rusty background as 3D layer. Okay. And let's go to position. First keyframe at start, second at 2-second mark. Now let's go to first keyframe and let's change position to something like this. Now let's go to graph editor for this and let's make this simple graph. Okay, so this actually is going to help us to get a really smooth transition from one part of video to the second part. And actually this is done right now. Now we just need to go to our main composition and let's import here part 2 composition. And now let's move this part 2 composition somewhere, probably here. Okay, now we need to also add right there, when our second part of animation is appearing, nice smooth transition to also this part. So you know, we need to add nice in transition here that will work with this out transition on our second part. So let's add our in transition. We need to add another null to this null. Okay, and exactly here is going to be peak of this movement. First keyframe, let's say here, second, let's say here, and now let's go to second keyframe. Let's change this position to something like that. And now let's go to graph editor and make graph with peak at this third mark. Something like that could be perfect. Now let's go to main composition, and also we want to add a really smooth and cool looking opacity in transition here. So let's create first keyframe for opacity at start, second probably like there, and the first keyframe let's put opacity to 0. And now let's go to graph editor, let's go to value graph, and graph for this probably should be pretty smooth, nothing sharp, probably just something like that. And also I would like to add here opacity in animation for background as well. So let's go here, let's go to opacity, first keyframe at start, second like there, go to first keyframe, change opacity to 0. Okay, and I think that with that we are done with whole animation. Now let's check how our final effect of insanely hard work looks like. Okay, and over here you can see our final result of this hard work. As you can see, it looks amazing. It's pretty difficult to create animation. Like Houston Cold style is insanely good, but it's very hard to execute that well. But as you can see, we of course were able to, and this looks amazing. So I think that I will not take you more time. You can click subscribe, click like, subscribe to that channel, and of course check link in the description where you can download all assets and also project file to this animation. So with that being said, we can end that video. Bye guys.